And I'm here with your all access interview with Andrew McMahon. Finally, I've been trying to track you down for a very long time, but you've been enjoying. You've had a pretty busy and pretty eventful 2015. Um, but going back quite a little bit of a way, you've got something corporate, Jack's Mannequin, and your sound now. How has that sound evolved through the several years? Not to say that there's many, but there has been.
There've been a lot of years and a lot of sounds. It's funny. Like I look at it, like even if you listen to the first something corporate to the next something corporate record, or the first Jacks to the second and third, like I try every record to sort of tweak the sound and find a new angle, and a lot of that's just informed by what I'm listening to at the time, what's out and what bands I'm excited by. I feel like sonically you sort of have to evolve and shift and move and keep things fresh so that you stay relevant and stay in the mix and are hopefully a step ahead of what's coming. And that was the case with this record, and I had a couple years to sort of dig into different sounds and styles in the studio with other artists and with other projects, and bring that to this project.
Excellent. And you have a pretty big hit there with Cecilia and the Satellite, big radio hit. Obviously very influenced by your daughter. I watched your documentary, Dear Jack, and sort of saw the progression of it's been 10 years now since Everything in Transit, but more so the big thing that sort of I think you said something about like interrupted your 20s, your cancer diagnosis.
Yeah.
And you were documenting first for the album, correct?
Right.
Why did you then sort of shift focus and choose to document your treatment?
It's interesting because I don't know if it was a conscious thing. I was documenting for the record, but I also, I mean, most people who at least are fans of Everything in Transit know that was sort of like this quintessential, like early 20s breakup record, and my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, like we were separated for that time. And so I sort of found myself using the camera as like, some sort of video diary or like art therapy or something, and it became my friend. I carried this camera with me everywhere, through the whole making of the first Jack's record, and then on to the very first tour. So it was just like this thing. I never even watched any of the tapes. I was just I had like dozens and dozens of tapes that I just used, I think, to purge whatever was going on for the day. And so when I found myself in the hospital, it was just this very natural thing. I had been talking to this camera as like my sidekick for almost a year, that it became the thing that I did when I was sick and having a hard day, or just trying to relate the facts of the day somewhere, and I would put it on this camera, and that's kind of how it all came to be.
And you hinted very early on that that you were going to get through this. You were very positive. Did you think back then that you would be where you are now?
I think at that moment I was, and I still am, I think, as a result of having gone through that, reluctant to project too far into the future on anything. I mean, I try my hardest to sort of manifest the places I want to be and and where I'm trying to go, but having like the carpet ripped out from under you in such a significant way, I think especially early in life, for me at least, I sort of process that like, okay, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, so the best thing that you can do is sort of take everything that you're trying to accomplish and accomplish as much of it that day as possible. And that's sort of how I've tried to live since then. Granted, I had some tricky years sort of following my diagnosis and my recovery, but I'd say now more than ever, I just try and do a good job today, and hope that means that I'll be standing on some big stage somewhere and playing songs for people.
And here you are. Somewhere in the documentary, you mentioned that you'll eventually be triumphant. I think that was a phrase that you used. Obviously, your wife now, Kelly, was an influential part of that. Who or what else helped you stay so positive? Because I think watching the documentary, I think for most people, having not gone through it, it seems very, very difficult.
I mean, my parents were amazing. All my sister was my stem cell donor, and I had incredible family, incredible friends, and was really blessed with that. My parents, it was interesting because in the time leading up to transit and the making of that record, I disconnected from a lot of people in my life, even some family, not like in a strange sort of way, but I was just sort of on this like satellite mission to just go, like I just was going wild for a year, and in a weird way, I think, being diagnosed, it sort of brought the people back to me that I needed there, and my folks were huge. Both my mom and dad were somebody was always sleeping at the bedside in the hospital, whether it was Kelly or my mom or my sister or my dad, and yeah, and the fans. I mean, these it may sound sort of corny to say, but there was such a intense outpouring of love from so many corners of the world, and also from my record label and from my manager. I mean, everybody was just there, and so yeah, I was very fortunate for that.
It was interesting and nice to see that your record label was whatever you need to do, let's do that, and over time, Everything in Transit became this really great album, especially for someone who's very similar, close in age to you. Do you think that you stayed going for the album, or did the album stay going for you?
It's a good question. It's funny because I have mixed feelings about the role the record played for me. I think in an immediate sense, it was huge. A huge motivator for me because I believed in those songs so much, and I took such a huge chance professionally and personally to write those songs and to release them. A lot of people thought I was out of my mind for stepping away from something corporate, which was so successful at the time, and I really believed in that record so much. I almost went broke making it, and I did it without this, the intention wasn't like, I'm going to get this out and, and become a solo artist. It was like, I knew I had to tell that story. And so in the hospital and in the early stages of, my treatment, I would say that was the point on the horizon I was gunning towards. It was like, I've got it. People have to hear these songs. I think I took it a little too far in the sense that I sort of put so much of, I think, the emotional and the mental side of my recovery just on the back burner and worked for years straight, and didn't stop. And that part of it was, I've reconciled it by now and it all is well. But I think that was sort of the tricky thing. It was the motivator, and then it sort of kind of turned in on me, and it became this thing. It was like, you should have taken a break at some point, but I did. It was just maybe 6 or 7 years later, and here we are. And I think that triumph that you talk about, it happened a lot later in the game than I had expected, but it was certainly, there was a point before this record where I kind of took my life back and took some semblance of control, as much as we can control, and that's sort of, I think, what led to the desire to create the Wilderness Project, really.
And your foundation, Dear Jack, is still going strong. How is Jack, by the way?
Jack's great. I mean, Jack, he actually plays in a band now, and I keep in touch, sort of semi-annually, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, he was sick years before I had ever known him, and then we became friends when his sister and I were friends in high school. And so yeah, so I had written him this song, and that's kind of got worked into the name of the Jack's Mannequin Project, and became a song of the name of the foundation and all these things. But yeah, he's doing great from what I.
Excellent. So tell me a little bit about the 72K challenge.
Yes. So a big thing for us this year was, I mean, as sort of this project was growing, I really wanted to double down on the foundation and say, like, okay, now I'm 10 years cancer free. It's a lot easier for me, I think, to talk about what I went through because I have so much more perspective on it, and it's easier for me to be in the room with people who are dealing with it because I just, I have enough distance from my own disease. So part of that was coming up with new initiatives for the foundation, trying to raise more money, advocate on a higher level than we ever have. And one of the first sort of steps in that direction was the 72K challenge, which we started, I guess, probably the end of the summer, and it'll go through the end of this year. And the goal is to raise $1 for each of the 72,000 newly diagnosed cases of adolescent and young adult cancer. every year, 72,000 new patients from 15 to 39 years of age are diagnosed. And we thought it would be symbolic to say, we're looking out for every single one of you newly diagnosed patients and trying to take that money and put it towards initiatives that will impact them, that will help sort of push the message that we're trying to spread, which is it's not acceptable that people ages 15 to 39 have seen the least improvement of any other demographic of cancer patient in 30 years. And that to me is, so many of the most important things in your life happen between 15 and 39. You're in high school. You're probably meeting your first love. You're going to college and graduating, getting married, getting your first job. All these things are like, having kids. All these things happen in this window. Yet this is the most underserved community, and we're trying to change that.
Well, this is certainly a great platform to do so. What's up next for you after this tour?
So we get home from this tour, and then a day later we leave to do a bunch of sort of the Christmas radio shows. Obviously, it's been an exciting year that we've had so many stations playing the songs. We'll go out and kind of go do their big blowout events through the end of the year, and then I'm gonna make a new record. There will be tour dates sort of intermixed in there as well, but I've written a handful of songs I'm really excited about, and I think that was kind of the goal, was as we were doing this and growing this project on the road, to start, to not deviate from this path of like constantly writing songs. So when I've had breaks, I've written, but I think January, February, March are going to be a combination of resting and taking a minute to breathe, and then jumping, sort of all I guess head first, feet first, however you'd say, but fully submerged in the creative process for a new album.
Excellent. Can't wait to hear more from Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness. This is Jackie. Thanks to All Access and In the Key of Change. Excellent.
Thanks, Jackie.
Thank you. So if I could bother